Hi everyone, Tiago here, and today I'm going to share with you a few of the reasons why we bought the Jayco Hawk in the first place, and then quite a few reasons why we moved to the Jayco Expanda, and then to eventually the Jayco Starcraft, which is the one I'm recording from right now. I'm just going to tell you a bit of our situation. So we are a family of 5, me and my wife and 3 kids, 5, 3 and 1 years old. And when we started this trip, we had no idea what caravaning was. So we didn't have any experience with van life. We did a bunch of camping before, but traveling full time, it's a whole new level for us. So we started this trip about 8 months ago. And now we are finally in a van that we are comfortable, and I think we're gonna stick with this one for longer. But let's go back to the Hawk right now. So when we started the trip, or before we started the trip, we started looking for a few options when it comes to caravan or camper trailer. And our price range, our budget at the time was around the 20K mark. And we wanted to buy a fairly new van, so we didn't have any problems with it. So I started looking for a few camper trailers and a few caravans. And I was almost decided to buy a camper trailer with the hard floor that would fold the whole tent on top of it. But then when I was talking to my wife, she said, let's go for the Jayco Hawk or the Jayco Swan, because it's got the whole kitchen inside, so it didn't have to do a lot when it comes to the kitchen, and the whole setup and backup was way easier than a camper trailer. So we decided to go with that. So we bought the Jayco Hawk, and a plus on the one that we bought was it was an Outback and it had aircon already. And we just bought the one with aircon because I was planning to work from inside the van quite a lot. Well, I'm still working from inside the van quite a lot, but that was the initial plan. And one of the things that it's good about the Jayco Hawk is it's quite small. It's only 1.5 ton, if I'm not mistaken, and it's really easy to tow. Okay, so that's a good thing. It's also quite easy to maneuver, so it's easy to reverse and park the van wherever you are. So that's pretty easy. And the fact that it has the full kitchen or nearly full kitchen inside, it's quite neat as well. A lot of the stuff that we did when it comes to cooking was inside the van. And it also had a small outdoor barbecue, the slider one. And that was quite handy. So I used to do a lot of the barbecuing in that barbecue as well. Even though this van is great for weekends or for extended holidays, for full-time traveling, it didn't work for our family. Here are some of the reasons why I think for full-time traveling, these vans are not great, right? First one is, and that was one of the biggest reasons why we made the move in the first place. The setup and the backup are quite big, right? Not comparing to a camper trailer or to a tent, but to a caravan. So the fact that you had to wind the whole van up and down, that's the easy part. And then you have to slide the beds out. That's actually quite easy as well. But the problem is we had so much stuff with us that until we had access to the van, we had to actually remove everything from the van. So everything was kind of packed inside, and we had to take everything out in order to have access to the van and eventually to have access to the beds to sleep. And one of the things when we were setting up, the bed covers of the van, they were attached to the roof, right? To the outside. of the roof. And if for any reason we forgot to put that covers and it was cold, we had to actually put the whole van back down to have access to the covers, and that was quite annoying as well. And also when we were packing up, again, because we had so many stuff in the van, every time something would get caught by the bats when we were sliding in the van. So that was quite annoying as well. So it wasn't really achievable or feasible for one night stop with this van. When we started this trip, we were doing quite a few one night stops around the country. So using a van like that, well, even though it's possible, it was quite annoying to have to set up and pack up every time, and taking so long to set up and pack up. Right, so not a deal breaker, but this one didn't have a toilet. The Jayco Hawk didn't have a toilet. And for us with 3 small kids, well, you can get away without it. But because our kids, they love being sit on the toilet and singing music or going through a book or something like that when they are doing a poo, it's quite hard not having a toilet inside of the van, because one of us, me or my wife Aline, would have to go with one of the kids to the toilet and wait for them to finish their job, and that would take like half an hour, 1 hour, because they wanted to spend time sitting on the toilet. So not having the toilet, even though it's not a deal breaker for most of the families or a lot of families, for us it was quite hard. And also not having a toilet meant it's really hard to do free camping. Even though a lot of the free camping, they do have toilet facilities, a lot of them, they would require that you are completely self-contained. And not having a toilet means we are not self-contained. Storage. When it comes to the storage in the Jayco Hawk, well, before we had the Jayco Hawk, we thought it had a lot of storage. It actually doesn't. As soon as you start putting stuff inside, you realize that there isn't much room left for you to put your stuff. And because you lose all the space when you wind the whole roof down, the only part that you have is that part beneath the beds, right? So every time we were packing up and setting up, we had to actually remove all our stuff and put all our stuff back in, because the storage is actually something lacking on these vans. Again, something related to the fact that you have to wind the whole van down or up when you're setting up and packing up is the bench height, right? It's pretty much like 2/3 of the van you actually winding up and down. So it leaves that a third to the height of the bench. And what does that mean? What does that impact? The bench height is actually quite small, and that's going to be pretty painful or dangerous in a lot of situations. Well, if you're doing the dishes, because it's quite low, you actually have to bend a little bit, and then after 15 minutes your back's hurting, which is quite painful. So for me it was quite annoying. And I'm not even a tall guy, I'm just a regular height guy. So it was pretty painful for me. But one of the key points when it comes to the height of the bench was because the kids actually had access to go to the grill or to the stove even. Well, my 2 eldest ones, they wouldn't go there, but my youngest one, when we started the trip, she couldn't walk, but she could stand, right? So she would often come to the kitchen area and she would reach the grill or reach the stove. So that was pretty scary for us. And the fact that you had to have the grill open when you're using it, it's kind of hard to have a baby crawling around and eventually trying to reach that grill. And the other thing about the bench height, well, it's not related to the bench itself, but related to the height that's left once you wind it down, is the size of the fridge. The size of the fridge was actually quite tiny, especially for a family of 5. So we actually had to have the fridge in the car full pretty much all the time because that fridge in the van was not big enough. There is a water pump in the Jayco Hawk, and it's a 12-volt water pump, which works quite well. But the thing with this is it's a combination of manual pump and electric pump, right? So if you wanted to do just the manual pump, it just move up and down and then the water will flow. If you want to use the electric pump, you have to press it down and hold it down for the water to flow. Which means if you are doing the dishes, you actually have to hold one hand there and then you only have one hand to do the dishes. Which, well, you can't do much with one hand doing the dishes. Well, at least I can't. The beds actually were not bad. They were quite comfortable. But the problem with the beds was the height, right? When it comes to the bench, it's pretty low. But when it comes to the bed, they are quite high. So for you to reach the bed, you had to actually climb just next to the kitchen or next to the sofa to reach the beds. And when you wanted to come out of the bed, from our side, from mine and Alini's, I had to actually crawl down, and it was quite hard when you're crawling. And sometimes I was afraid to get head first on the ground because I was crawling to get out of the bed when Alini was sleeping. And with the kids, that was an issue as well. Even though on one side of the beds, on the double bed, we had that mesh, that net to hold the kids there. But Maya, our youngest one, she could actually go around, which was a bit of a problem. But that wasn't a big issue for us, the height of the bed. We could get away with it. But the problem is we have 3 kids. And having only 2 beds, that there is a bit of juggling around. On one side, we had me and Alini, and on the other side, we had 3 kids. But one of them, Maya, was pretty young, so she ended up sleeping with us pretty much every day, which is not quite ideal. Eventually, she was sleeping with Anita, which is our middle one, and then Lucas was sleeping on the sofa. But well, every night we had to do some sort of juggling for the kids to sleep. And the last bit is the insulation. The insulation on these sort of vans, they're not amazing, right? And when we started the trip, it was July, and it was quite cold in some areas. So we actually felt quite cold. Even though we were in Queensland, it was quite cold at night. So what we did to kind of try and get away without the insulation was to have those insulation material on the bed areas. So we tried to put that to add a bit of insulation, but well, it wasn't great anyway. All right, so 1 month within the trip, we decided that was enough. We were eventually gonna fight a lot because of the amount of setup and pack up and who stays with the kids while the other one sets up and packs up. So he said, all right, so let's try to sell this van and let's try to get another one. So when we were in LA Beach, I think, we just posted on Facebook Marketplace to see if it would sell. If we could sell it, we would upgrade. If we couldn't, then we would just keep going until we managed to sell. And we did. So we sold in a couple of days, and then we managed to get the Jayco Expanda just in between. So that was amazing timing. And then we got the Expanda, which we were super happy when we got it. We had the Jayco Expanda for about 4 months, and we loved the Expander when we moved to the Expander. It wasn't as cheap as the Jayco Hawk, obviously. It was pretty much double the price of the Jayco Hawk. I think we paid around the 40 grand mark, but it's still way cheaper than a lot of vans out there. The thing that we noticed first was the amount of setup and pickup. It was way, way easier. So we didn't need to wind the whole van up and down. We had to pop the roof up and down, but it was just like a pretty much like 5 seconds. Pop, pop, and it was done. The awning on the outside, instead of winding the awning up and down, it was just a matter of pulling the awning, and it was good. And we didn't need to slide the beds out and back in. It was the system of the Jayco Expanda is the beds at the end, they fold. So it's much easier because it doesn't use any of the internal space. It's just at the end of the caravan, you just fold it out and off you go. It's way easier to pack up and to set up, right? Because it doesn't use any of the internal space. So you don't need to actually move a lot of the internal stuff around to make the beds fit. And finally, we could do a one night stop because the amount of setup allowed us to do that, while the Jayco Hawk we couldn't. And hooray, we had a full toilet in the Jayco Expanda. Well, everything was in the same place. We had the toilet and the sink just over the toilet and the shower in the same area. But, well, we had everything, so we were self-contained, which allowed us to do more free camping, which we did, and we loved it. And when it comes to the bench, well, it was way taller than the Hawk. So it was pretty much the standard height, a bit lower, but it was way better for my back. It was still quite easy to tow, even though the weight of the Expander was 2.3, 2.4 ton. It was quite easy to tow as well. The problem we had at the time was with the car. Because we had a Nissan Pathfinder, the new build, it quite struggled with the weight. I don't know if it was the weight on the towable or the weight of the caravan itself, but it was struggling. We didn't feel that struggle that much when we were on road, but when we did go to Kangaroo Island, we actually got stuck twice because the car couldn't pull the caravan uphill in Kangaroo Island. So that was quite annoying. Thanks God we got out of there with no major dramas, but we did have to call for help twice because the car couldn't pull the caravan, and another time because we got bogged in the sand. That was my mistake. And the fridge was big. Well, not kind of a family of 5, kind of big, but it was big. It was way bigger than the fridge that we had in the Hawk. It did the job quite well, and some of the stuff that didn't fit in the fridge, we would put in the car fridge, and we were good to go. So regarding the beds, so we had a queen bed on one side, a double bed on the other side, and we had 2 bunk beds in the middle of the Jayco Expanda. So that worked quite well because on one side we would sleep in, on the other sides, well, sometimes Anita would sleep in the double bed with Maya, and Lucas would sleep on the top bunk. So that's how it started, like Lucas in the top bunk and Anita in the lower bunk actually, and Maya would sleep in the double bed. Eventually Anita moved to the double bunk with Maya, and the lower bunk we sat as a quiet corner, as a reading sort of sofa, so that worked quite well. And the good thing about not doing that much setup anymore is that we could stop just on the road. if we were feeling like having lunch while driving or anything like that, we could just stop, pull over, and then do lunch or snack, right? Where with the Hawk, not possible at all. The only issue with that is I would keep hitting my head on the roof of the Expander because it was just a bit lower than me, unless I wanted to pop the roof, which we never did for a quick stop for lunch or anything like that. And we had the hot water system in the Expander, which was kind of cheating when it comes to camping. Well, not to caravaning. Nah, it's fine. It's good. Well, we couldn't live without it anymore. And we had the solar system. Well, the solar panel in the Expander was quite tiny. It was just 100 watts, but it could keep the battery level up. We didn't use the battery for a lot of stuff. And the insulation in the Jayco Expanda was way better than the Jayco Hawk, but it's still not great. It's still not amazing because we could still feel like the breeze coming from the ends, from the bad ends, and from the roof where we popped up. And one thing that we noticed as soon as we got in the van, when we bought it, was the visibility that we could get from inside the van. In the Jayco Hawk, we had those tops all around the van, so it was kind of blurry anytime we wanted to see outside. Where with the Jayco Expanda, it had those like double glazed plastic or glass sort of windows, and we could actually see everything from outside. So that for us was amazing when we made the move. All right, so let's go now to the things that didn't work for us. One of the main reasons why we moved was the mattress. It wasn't the most comfortable one, and we could upgrade the mattress for whatever reason. But the thing with this is because of the system that they had in the Expander, because they fold up and down when you set up and back up, the mattress in the Expander, they're split in half, so we can fold the beds to be able to travel, right? But we could actually feel that joint when we're sleeping. So it folds like in 1/3 or 1/4 of the mattress. So you guess like Aline would use like 3/4 of the bed, and I would use like 1/4 of the bed. So eventually my back would start hurting again. And if I moved Aline to that side of the bed, well, she would wake up with back pains also. That wasn't amazing. And the space to get in the beds was quite small. I'll show you in the pictures. It was quite small. It was like that size here for you to get in and out of the bed. So we actually had to crawl in and crawl out of the bed. So one of the things that was quite annoying as well, the bed ends, they're like tents, right? So it's all top around. And there is a bar that goes over your head when you set up the bed. And when comparing to the Hawk, that part of the bed in the Hawk was quite tall. So you could actually sit on that area and then have a chat or whatever. But in the Expander, you can't really sit on that area. So a lot of times when I woke up, I would sit up and I would bang my head straight into the bar that holds the tent up. So that was quite annoying. Not a deal breaker. I did realize soon enough that I couldn't sit up, so I didn't hit my head, but I did hit my head so many times, so that was annoying. At the back of our Expander, we put a bike rack at the end of the Expander, which we could remove it to open the bed. And the reason I'm telling you all that is it's a bit annoying to remove the rack to open the bed. So anytime we were doing a one-night stop, we actually didn't open that bed at all. So because of that, Maya would sleep with us, and Anita would sleep on the lower bunk, and Lucas would sleep in the top bunk. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. That's all good. But the problem with that is the kids didn't have their own space because they were always moving around. Sometimes Anita would sleep in the lower bunk, sometimes she would sleep in the double bed, and sometimes Maya would sleep in the double bed, or sometimes Maya would sleep with us, and they wouldn't have their own space, and we had to actually set up their space every time. So we wanted them to feel home, to have their own space, to have their own pocket or area that they could put their own treasures in there. So making the move to a bigger van would allow us to have this space for them. All right, back to the toilet. Now we had a toilet, and that was amazing. But the problem with that is it's all in one place, right? So when you had a shower, you would wet the whole toilet and the sink. And when you wanted to use the sink, you had to open the sink. When you wanted to use the toilet, you had to close the sink. Um, Not a deal breaker, but that was quite annoying having to wash the toilet area and the sink area every time you have a shower. So that was a bit annoying. And when we moved to the Expanda, we no longer had an outdoor barbecue. Oh, that was sad. I had to buy another one, which I was quite happy to buy. So I went there and I bought a new barbecue. I was pretty happy with this. But the problem with that is it means that we had something else to float around because we didn't have that much storage in the Expander either. So the barbecue would stay under the bed or under the kids' bed, not our bed, because our bed didn't have storage underneath, or under the table or something like that. So we didn't have a specific space for the barbecue, so it would keep floating around until we set up outside to have a barbecue. The storage in the Expander is way better than the Hawk. It's still not amazing. So we didn't have the space for our own clothes. So we didn't have a wardrobe. We only had, well, Eileen had some compartments at the top, and I had like a drawer in the bottom. So it was really hard to reach. And one small thing, not a big deal either, is because you had to pop up and down the roof of the caravan, you actually lost all those space around because you couldn't put anything on top of the cabinet because eventually when you pack up you had to put it down, which we did all the time. But all those things floating around in the top shelf, we would have to do something with it in the travel day. So that would increase our backup and setup because of that. And finally, not deal breakers either, but it was more like a wish list for us. So we wished we had an oven in the Expander, which we didn't, and we wished we had a washing machine in the caravan, which in this case we didn't. All right, so I told Alini that as soon as we got to Melbourne, if we were willing to travel for longer, we should upgrade our van again to get a full-size van. So we got to Melbourne and we decided, all right, so we're going to upgrade the van. Well, we upgraded the car first to handle the weight in the van. And we decided to upgrade the van again. So we started looking around. We saw a bunch of Jayco Journeys and a Jayco Starcraft. So we looking around and we finally found a Starcraft within our budget. I think we paid a bit over 50 grand, but it ticked all the boxes. It was amazing. That's the one I am right now. We are super happy with this van. They have comfortable beds, so I don't hit my head when I'm sitting up. We can access the bed from all around. At the back, we had the triple bunk for the kids, so they have their own space all the time. So we don't need to set up back up anything apart from the mess they make there, but it's their own space. The fridge is quite big, and we have the fridge and the freezer separate. We have an oven and we have a washing machine. That's awesome. Even though we can only use washing machines when we are in caravan parks, which we're trying to avoid. Well, we go to caravan parks now just to do the washing. And the toilet is separate to the shower, which is great. Now, one child can go and have a shower while someone else is using the toilet. So storage in the Starcraft is way better again. So we have tons of storage, and the only things that float around when we are on the travel days are the chairs that don't fit anywhere because they're a bit bulky. So you just put around here, and that's it. So in the next video, we're gonna do a full tour of our current setup, the Jayco Starcraft Outback. So I hope you like this video. If you like this video, just thumbs up. If you wanna see more videos like that, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.